Strive Coaching Studio, guiding business leaders to meet the highest version of themselves. And now, here's Michelle, certified coach and founder of Strive Coaching Studio.
Hello, everybody. I have such an interesting topic that I feel like is so fresh on so many people's minds right now. And that is regarding how the labor shortages and product and supply chain shortages are a real challenge right now. You may relate to this, and even if your business is not specifically affected by this right now, my guess is that this message might grab you anyway. It might be something that is an interesting point of view and an interesting perspective that might help you in some other area where you are having a challenge right now. The other day, I was chatting with one of my clients, and it was on the heels of multiple discussions about this particular topic with a variety of clients recently. And this analogy popped in my mind. We were talking about the labor shortages and running lean with the individuals that we do have on our teams and evaluating how to manage it all right now. What makes sense? And we discussed how hard everybody is working. We discussed the concepts of the fact that Zoom meetings or Teams meetings are running back to back all day long, some even overlapping each other right now. Schedules are being made for people, and the demands and pulls for the scheduling of time, while many work virtually or not, are being pulled in just a variety of directions and priorities and focus. And it's been a bit of a reset right now. I even mentioned that when we were in person in our meetings, at least we could get up from our meeting when the meeting was over, walk to the bathroom, stop by the kitchen or the water cooler, grab a snack, get a drink, grab a cup of coffee, and then move on into wherever the next meeting was being held, possibly even a different chair than you were sitting in before, hopefully. And your level of engagement could have different levels of intensity depending on what that was. So that is a very real difference for a lot of people right now, going back to back with Zoom meetings, or sometimes there's multiple Zoom meetings or Teams meetings being scheduled for you. So these are real challenges that many businesses and managers and owners are facing right now. And we were discussing that at each time you think you're getting back to some sense of smoothness, routine, consistency, or normalcy, that something else happens to change it yet again. Someone gets sick, needs to have surgery, has a family member who requires their attention, goes on vacation, quits, is learning a new skill or a new software program, or new challenges, new shortages, new whatever come up. And it just doesn't seem to ever be any different than that. So after listening and talking about this with several of my clients, I want to offer you this. What if this is normal? What if we just decide this is the way it is, and this is exactly how it just is? Maybe we can just stop waiting for the day that it's not anymore, and recognize that this just is the days and weeks and months. This is the way they just are. And when we face each moment as if it isn't supposed to be that way, we cause ourselves so much stress and frustration and impatience and intolerance and exhaustion, because we're pushing ourselves so hard because this next hurdle will be over soon. And once that's over, then I can finally get back to normal, or the routine, or the consistency, or the job that I'm supposed to be doing, that I now, looking back, haven't done in months and months and months, maybe more than a year, depending on your situation. And eventually, we just might need to look at it for what it is and figure out how we're going to get our real job done, and our real day done, and our real week done, in spite of, and knowing that this is what we have. This is a reality for us. Maybe we can just do what needs to be done, plan for it, accept it, and then just feel peaceful and resourceful and proactive toward it, rather than reacting and defending and acting like we're just barely surviving. All of this because we are humans. We are not machines. We all have stuff going on. We all have our limitations. We all have imperfect, ever-changing lives, each of us individually, and then collectively, we're a bunch of imperfect, ever-changing humans in this together. So to expect it to not to be something that it isn't probably doesn't add up anyway, and it was probably unrealistic anyway. And as I was talking about this concept and offering this approach, the idea of a factory came to my mind. And I was thinking that even though we are not machines, and we cannot be expected to run like a machine, even if we were and did, here would be some of the points of a factory production owner and the kinds of things they would have to consider. And maybe you can appreciate the analogy. I was imagining a factory that produces things, widgets, or whatever it produces. And when production increases and demand increases, how a factory owner determines what to do about it. There's choices available to them and decisions they need to make that are in line with the business goals and what they have to work with. Now, they could buy more equipment to produce more widgets. They could choose to upgrade their current equipment to the latest and greatest available out there. That's an option too. Another thing they could do is they could just use the same equipment and the machines that they've had all along and just run them more to increase productivity. Maybe rather than 8 hours a day, they're running them 16 hours per day, or even 24 hours per day, right? They could also raise their prices enough so that the production slows down again, and they don't need to make any changes at all to their equipment, just improve the profit margin of how much they make per widget. And look at those numbers. So many options from which they could choose, and each one has its advantages and drawbacks, its pros and cons. Of course, buying more equipment costs money, adding to our cost of goods. And while it might alleviate the workload on the current equipment, we need to justify paying for it. Upgrading equipment costs money too, and probably time, as you swap out the old with the new and then train to learn the new as it gets up and running. Not to mention, there wasn't anything wrong with the old equipment. It's just not keeping up with the current production demands and what you need right now, this moment. Running the existing equipment more, longer, and harder may not be sustainable. How much more often will there be downtime for maintenance, upkeep, and repairs? Not to mention the life of the machine being shortened and the components of the machine stressed. Can raising price really be sustainable, and is it worth improving profit margins over more units sold? Is that the best business decision? So many pieces to evaluate and consider. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer, and the choice one makes can always be evaluated to make a different choice later. So if the quote-unquote equipment, in my analogy, is a team of humans who are also imperfect and ever-changing, unlike equipment, not only must we be mindful of all of the above that I just went through, but the reality of the human element as well. We humans require maintenance and upkeep, and we break down when we're run too hard without proper care. As leaders, when we expect our people to run like machines, we're not truly seeing what it takes to run the most effective and efficient and quality business we can to ensure that our profit margins, our units, and our quality are running at their highest potential levels. We are not machines, and yet, when we can understand what it takes for each of the components to run at their maximum potential for the long-term life rather than maximum output in the short term, we can enjoy the payoffs for the long term. When we set up and plan for reality, for our best outcome long term, we can achieve so much more and all enjoy it. That'd be a nice bonus too. Again, there's not a right or wrong answer. It's a matter of evaluating the big picture, all of the pieces and parts, and truly being honest about all of the consequences, all the risks and all the rewards, all the pros and cons. So the wisdom I want to offer you up for consideration is this. Evaluate the pros and cons of each of them realistically and honestly when making the decisions. Next, put all of the plans and the things into place to support those decisions and its pros and cons, being very realistic about what really is rather than what we want to hope or pretend it will be. For example, putting a maintenance service program into place if you plan to run equipment 24 hours a day, rather than hoping it will never break down or waiting for it to happen and causing more downtime and money loss later, probably would be a good way to anticipate that. And next, be willing to watch and evaluate it honestly, realistically, and carefully to determine what works and what didn't. And importantly, whether something needs to change now. It's okay to make new decisions as you see the results of the ones you make play out. The only way you know if your decision worked and if it was the right one is whether or not you liked the results. And if you don't like the results, reevaluate the decision. What defines a good leader is someone who can be realistic and plan for the best case and the worst case, and be willing to look at the data to make new decisions that serve the company, its equipment, and its people best. Being a good leader and a good advocate of the company and a servant of your company, an investor in your company, an owner of your company, whatever that looks like for you, means making the best decisions that make sense in the big picture. Not just in the short term, hoping for the best, crossing your fingers, just waiting for this little season to pass before we move on to the next one. Planning, adjusting, evaluating your results, and readjusting and making new decisions is what your job is as a leader. So I wish you a productive, long-term, successful factory as you move forward navigating through this new normal we have in front of us. And by the way, pass this along to someone else you think could benefit from this message. And I hope I'll be seeing you again soon. Come join us.
Thanks for listening. For more great tips, visit us on strivecoachingstudio.com.